Let me hear from you, Marilyn, because you were misdiagnosed with cancer.
Yes, I was.
They told you had a brain tumor.
Yes, they did.
And only to later come find out that this was not the case. So probably tell me, how did you end up, first of all, going to that particular health facility? What prompted you now to realize I need to go get medical help?
I just really do not remember, because I went off for 1.5 years. I was vegetative. I could not, my mind completely shut off.
When you say you were vegetative, that means that you were unconscious.
I was conscious, my eyes were open, but I could not communicate. I could not speak. What happened was I woke up in the morning and I went to work. And as I was seated at my workstation, I started convulsing like somebody who had epilepsy.
Which had never happened before in your life.
I was very healthy. I hardly ever got any ailments at all.
And how old were you when this first happened?
I had just turned around 25, 26. I was at the prime of my life. I had a very good job. I was getting very well paid. I was managing a health product called Fleximed for an HMO. And I grew up in Thika, but I got a job in Nairobi, and I was happy with my life. So next thing, after convulsing 3 times, they rushed me to hospital. And they did a CT scan, and they saw this growth coming from the inside of my head, right round about my spine. And so they did something called a biopsy. They opened my head up from here.
That's where you have the scar?
Yes, I have a scar here. And they cut whatever little something they could cut to study it. And after studying it, they came up with the conclusion that I had cancer. And they started the cancer treatment. But I didn't get better. I didn't get any better. And I was always in ICU, HDU, because it wasn't cancer. And they did the second biopsy. And they still came up with cancer.
So how long was this treatment period?
2 years.
2 years of being
told that
you
In the long run, it was 2 years, because they did up to biopsy number 3 when one of the doctors said, no, this cannot be, something is wrong.
And when you say biopsy, that means they have to cut you open?
They have to open me up. And they opened me up 3 times.
And take something from your brain?
Take something from that growth, cut a bit of that growth, and study it under the microscope. The last biopsy, they decided they needed help from outside. This time I have changed hospitals. I started with the Aga Khan. Then I went to the Nairobi hospital. At the Nairobi hospital, my mother could not afford it. But by the time I was at the Nairobi hospital, they did biopsy number 3, and they sent them out. One they sent, I think, outside the country, and the other one to Kemri.
Because despite the fact that you had been diagnosed,
yes,
under treatment,
nothing was happening.
Still not
I was getting
better.
Worse, yes. So Kemri sent back immediately and says, no, she does not have cancer, she has TB. So they start treating me for TB, and my body rejects the treatment. You cannot treat me for cancer yesterday, and then today you decide you're treating me for TB. You have to give a grace period. And that grace period, I was in ICU, HDU, I was everywhere because I was so badly off.
Because your body was now
My
in
body
shock.
was not, yes, and it was trying to readjust itself to the TB treatment. I became so thin, a stick-thin something. They gave me steroid shots here, which is part of TB treatment, I presume, and poof, later on in life. But at one point, I was kicked out of Nairobi Hospital. And my mom, my late mom, she passed on later on, took me to a hospital in Tena Estate called Prime Care. I think they closed down. And at Prime Care, it was more of physiotherapy than anything. And I woke up, and I looked around, and I asked myself, where am I? So I asked
What do you mean when you say you woke up?
I woke up because I woke up in the morning, and I looked around, and at first I thought I was in school.
So you had been in hospital that entire time?
Yes.
And how long was that period?
It was 1.5 years later.
Admitted?
Yes.
In hospital?
Yes. It's
Now
when
going
I finally
through...
woke up and realized, where is this? So I asked a lady who was knitting something. I said, excuse me, 3 times. Then finally she looked up and she said, huh? Did you say something? I said, yes. I said, I called you. She said, hold on. And she rang for the nurse. And the nurse came running and asked, what's the problem? She said, it's no problem. Wambui spoke. So the nurse came to me and told me, hello. I said, hi. So she told me, Wambui. I said, yes. At least I knew my name. I asked her, where am I? She told me, you're in hospital. I told her, really? What happened to me? She told me, let me call the doctor. He'll explain to you what happened to me.
Because
I had been vegetative. I cannot call it comatose.
1.5 years.
Yes. My eyes were open, but I never said, once in a while I'd say, I want to see so-and-so. Then I'd go back into it. But finally, after now the TB treatment, and I guess the physiotherapy that I was doing at the hospital, I woke up. Because I remember my mom walked in, and she walked in and I saw her. I told her, hi, Ma. She just started crying.
Because it had been a very long road for her.
Yes.
And probably, tell me about those 1.5 years that you say you were in a vegetative state. So what was that like? Were you conscious? You could see people around you?
I don't remember.
So it's a gap in your memory.
And I am told. Now my mother is the one who told me. She told me, Wambui, you only spoke once in a very long while. You'd say, I want to see Uncle Boyaki. And they'd send for him and he'd come running. And he says, Wambui, I am here. And I'd just look at him like,
So it was incoherent speech?
Yes.
You were not conscious of what you were saying?
I wasn't.
So you lost 1.5 years of your life?
Yes.
No memory whatsoever?
None at all.
So finally now you woke up, and what was your recovery process like?
It was not easy because nobody told me anything. That is one mistake we make. Please tell the patient what is wrong with the patient. Do not let them make up their own stories. So finally somebody came and told me, you suffered TB and they thought you had cancer.
Because you had forgotten even the initial
I don't remember. I don't even remember convulsing. I couldn't. One thing with the mind that I have discovered by doing a lot of research, it cuts off all those bad things that it does not want you to remember. The trauma. I do not remember at all. It is now my mother who sat me down and told me A, B, C, D. This is what happened. And we only discovered what you had because of Kemri. Thank God for Kemri, I would say. Yes.
And looking at you today, because even as you are making your way up to the set, it's not easy.
It isn't.
So what do you have to live with for the rest of your life as a result of this misdiagnosis?
One, when I first got well, I couldn't walk at all. I would sit down and see people doing the things that I used to do, but I can't do them. And I looked up to God and I wanted to ask him, what is it that I did that was so wrong for me to get this TB in my brain? And as I was contemplating that, I think my mom noticed. She looked at me and she told me, no, don't ask him that. Take in whatever you can take in. Take the positive and completely eliminate the negative. So I looked up to God and I told him, come and sit here. I told him, I don't want much. I just want to be able to wake up from here and hobble, 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 walk to the toilet and come back. I don't want much. I don't even want to run. I never used to run anyway. So I got that. And God told me, yes, you will walk, but you will suffer the consequences of that walk. I lost my center of balance when I got these cuts, 3 cuts in my brain. And I said, at least I can wake up from where I am and hobble to the toilet and come back and sit down.
For you, it's a small blessing because
it is not even a small,
huge blessing.
It's huge. It is huger than me waking up in the morning and saying, hi all. You know, it is. Because I appreciate what I have. I wake up in the morning, I look at myself in the mirror and I tell myself, I'm big. Yes, I was a size 12 when I went into hospital. Now look at me. But hey, I'm alive. How many people will wake up in the morning and say, hey, I'm alive? I appreciate the fact that I am alive and I wake up in the morning and I make noise. You hear me? I'm making noise, ain't I?
Yes.
How many of you, how many dead people can wake up from the grave and say, holla, I'm here? None. But because I can wake up and say something, I went back to school and did psychological counseling. If you have an issue, call me. I'll come where you are. And I'll make you realize.
And probably, boy, you had a child through all this.
After getting sick and asking God, I would walk, trip, and fall. I'm not the kind of person who would trip and run and get over. I would drop, and I cannot get myself from down there. So eventually when I woke up and I wiped myself and I hobbled away, I'd go telling God, thank you, at least I woke up. I'm no longer where I was. eventually, I was blessed with a beautiful, beautiful son. I'm not going to say his name. And I am going to tell you this. He is the man in my life. My mom passed on after she got diabetes and she passed on. She saw my son. And she could barely even hold the phone and text her friends and tell her friends, I am a Rashosho. I have a grandson. But I look at that boy when he looks at me and says, Mommy, and I shed a tear. Because I know God loves me. I am here because there's a God above. And I appreciate myself. I wake up in the morning, the whole of me, big me, I love myself. If you do not love yourself first, nobody's going to love you. Okay? Appreciate yourself. Give a clap for yourself.
Right. Now, on that note, it's time for a very quick break. We'll be right back.